to be able to, or feel able to express themselves and come forward.
So there's just a few words from Luke. So we're going to play the film now. Sorry, having some problems with the sound. 1 second. Sorry about this. This did not happen earlier. Now we're going to play the film.
As second-class citizens in our country and putting other people, these alien colonizers, before us. It is just astonishing.
To hit everybody, to hit Islam, and you take it out from our country, and we will be taking it back. But no, that's like, and then she flirts, and then she flirts. That's what the girl that speaks to everybody. So sorry about that.
Oh, thanks. That's no problem. We've all got to look after each other, haven't we?
Yeah.
now. That's enough. Right, I'm calling the police.
Hi, can I come in?
Okay. Hopefully you guys at the back could see all of that, and hopefully you could hear it. It's not the ideal room for screening a film like this with all the light coming through, but hopefully you kind of got the sense of what that film's about. The rest of this morning is really an opportunity for us to have a discussion, for us to ask questions, and in the room we do have lots of experts. So if we could just really quickly just say who you are and which agency or organisation or individual group that you are representing. So we start with you. Sorry. And just so everybody, all of the students here know who they're talking to. You can stand up if you want to.
Hi, I'm Julie Paget, Manager of Plymouth and Devon Racial Quality Council. I've been working with people from diverse communities for the past 18 years, and sadly that rang so true because just this week, just last week I've been supporting a young girl who has been receiving racism at school. So actually that rang quite heart-wrenching, really. Thank you.
If we just keep going around.
Okay.
Just really quickly.
Hi there, my name's Lynn Wilson and I work at Stop Hate UK. So I spend my days, all day, every day, working on hate crime, and my team work through the clock 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to take hate crime reports. As the film says, you don't have to experience hate crime yourself in order to report it. And just very quickly, if anybody wants to report a hate crime, You can do it in so many different ways, by picking up the phone, by texting, by having an online chat, by emailing us, and there will be somebody there to, if you do call, to speak to you. 90% of our calls are answered within 4 rings, so you will talk to a real person. And as well as reporting a hate crime, we can offer real emotional support as well, and signpost you or put you in touch with services that might also help, as well as reporting to the police. You'll see these little cards on your tables, and what I would suggest is if you can take one, put it in your wallet or your purse. You might not need it today, you might not need it tomorrow, but if you do come across a hate crime issue, you could give us a call, and hopefully we can support you.
If we just name who you're here to represent, I'm sure all of that stuff is going to come up in our conversation.
Okay. Good morning, my name is Dave Rollins. I'm here today from the City Council, and the area I oversee is community safety.
Good morning, my name is Trayvon Baker. I'm the Inclusion and Community Engagement Manager for the Crown Prosecution Service. Hello everyone, I'm Jenny Cater. I'm a prosecutor for the Crown Prosecution Service. Hello, evening. I'm a second year student here at Mevo District.
Hello everybody, I'm Baz, Bayim Officer for Settlement Development and Coordinator for Kudusha Exam.
Hello, I'm Sister Iqbal. I'm a Muslim chaplain. I work with the Formal Faith Forum and with George Little, Graham Little here on the hate crime team as an independent advisor for the police. And I go to schools and colleges and council offices, wherever I'm invited to explain what Islam is about Abrahamic faith, and about Islamophobia.
My name is Graham Kirkup. I work for the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, which has been a recent post. Before that, I was 30 years as a police officer in the city of Plymouth.
Good morning, my name is also Graham Kirkup.
Twins.
I'm Graham Little. I'm part of the West Community team based in Charles Cross Police Station. I'll be here to field your questions, but that doesn't just mean in a group forum. I'll be here all day. If you do want to have a chat about anything we discussed today, please just feel free to come up and fire away any questions you have.
Hi, I'm Rachel Beasley. I'm a hate crime detective. I work in the diverse communities team with Graham.
And you're recognised as one of our professional actors in the film.
Hi, Ollie.
My name is Mike Cookray. I'm a local volunteer for Stop Hate UK, and I work for me. Even though it's based in Leeds.
Is it Nina?
It's you now.
So I'm Anne Rowlands. I'm co-founder of Not Alone Plymouth, which is a transgender and non-binary support group. And early this year we became a third-party reporting centre for hate crime.
Hi everyone, I'm David Clendenin. I'm the local manager for refugee services at the Red Cross. I'm also the founder and chairperson of Mevo, which is a local charity that uses sport for social and community integration. We also do a lot of work together.
Good morning everyone, I'm Sony. I'm from the Plymouth ASD project, Party Victim Support. We're also a third-party hate crime reporting service.
And if we come over to this table over here.
Hello, hi, my name is Manuela Frawanio. I'm representing the Romanian community. I'm a third-party reporting centre. I'm as well an independent advisor for the Women Police and a Crime Stop Committee member.
Go that way. Go this way, not this table. I'm Alan Butler. I'm one of the directors of Crime in Plymouth, which is the city's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender social enterprise. We're a third-party reporting centre, and I'm an independent advisor and sit on the sort of Southwest thematic hate crime group.
Hi, I'm Pete Daly. I run an oral history project called Hundreds of Homes, which is won a lot of awards for its community engagement. I also sit here for Visual Arts Plymouth as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark, one of the co-directors of Pride in Plymouth, sort of support the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender.
Sorry, can't hear you.
Speak up a bit, sorry.
Yeah, so we support the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender communities in Plymouth. More recently, we've been supporting LGBT asylum seekers. So a lot of these people are suffering double discrimination.
Hi, I'm Andy Grace. I'm an associate lecturer at the University of Plymouth and Equality Diversity Coordinator.
Hi, I'm Donna Moore. I'm a third year student at Plymouth Uni, and I also work alongside Pete on the oral history project, and I work in the community for Translate UK as well.
Good morning, my name is Debbie Lay. I'm a community support worker for the Intercom Trust, which is a southwest-based lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender charity. We're also a third-party reporting centre.
And finally, last but by no means least.
My name is Amanda Sheriff. I work for the prison service, running something called the Good Prison Project. So I try and get communities as involved as I can in kind of prison, inviting, So I've invited quite a lot of people here to come into kind of prison, and I work with the Prison Crime Commissioner around kind of releases and some of the discrimination actually that we see inside prison.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else in the room who is here representing an organisation? I think we've covered everybody. Right, so hopefully what you've gathered from those introductions is we have a wealth of experience, a wealth of support, and a wealth of kind of knowledge at our disposal today. So it really is over to you. What questions do you have? What discussions would you like to have today? Anything? I've got some questions from students already here, but I'd like to open it to the floor first.
On the panel, please feel free.
And anyone else that wants to say anything? Okay,
I just wanted to add some weight to the video which was showing about the incident, but it's a really, really amazing, impressively powerful video. We did a successful conviction on a very similar incident in the last 3 months. It was a religiously...
I don't think anyone can hear you.
No, sorry, I'll try again. And just to add some weight to the film about the incident on the bus, we had a successful conviction in the last 3 months. It was an incident of aggravated religious and racial abuse on a bus towards a Muslim lady and her young children. And it was the bus driver who intervened, and the lady got off the bus, and at the stop, the perpetrator refused to get off, and the police was called, and we had a successful conviction on the basis of the bus driver's evidence and the CCTV. The victim did not have to come forward. So bystander reporting is really important and really powerful. In that case, the perpetrator had a 12-month community order, 20 days, to help me out? Rehabilitation activity requirement, and fines totaling over £400. So Crown Prosecution does take hate crime extremely seriously, and we do get positive outcomes at conviction.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm a student here, and I actually work as a support worker in mental health. I just want to know, does all of this relay as well to people with disabilities or mental health as well? Because I've heard everything else, but I haven't heard anything about mental health and how it works on that side.
It absolutely does. Now, I guess I can kind of open that up to some of the experts. Does anyone want to field that? So Graham might be a good one.
Do I need to stand?
As long as we can hear you, it doesn't matter, Graham.
All right, well, in relation to your question, it is a really good question because I've had to ask that myself about 18 months ago around, there's a lot of issues around mental health and the way it's dealt with by a lot of our services at the moment. When you're talking hate crime, as long as the mental health condition is considered a disability, and it can range, and I'm sure you're aware, as long as it's considered a disability, yes, this comes as part of the hate crime characteristic, or under the hate crime protection. But it needs to be considered a disability itself, which would be hugely impacted on lifestyle for a minimum of 12 months or incurable.
Yeah.
That is your question?
I think if I could just come in as well, there was an invited guest who was due to come today, who sadly has had to drop out, who has done massive amounts of work within Devon and Plymouth with LD, so learning disability type hate crime, and has done a fantastic amount of work in addressing issues.
I mean, obviously I work within Plymouth as a support worker, and I work with ranges of different service users, and obviously on working with them I do understand, you know, hate crime that they go through as well. So I'm glad to see that it has been supported. It's just I didn't hear it, you know, that side of it. So.
I think there's a lot of people that aren't aware either when it is reported to have it categorised as a hate crime. It's certainly something we'll be turning our attention to. We have over the last few months, we're certainly moving forward as well.
So, is it not, I mean, I don't know the statistics, but I've heard that hate crimes against disabled people is the highest level of hate crime.
So for those of you that didn't hear that, the question is sorry, has heard that the instances of hate crime against disabled people is the kind of the highest level of increase in terms of reported incidences?
Well, again, when I answer these questions, I'm always very cautious in that if we see an increase, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the community targeted the most, if that makes sense. It means there's an increase in reporting, and it's always very difficult with hate crime. Yes, we have seen an increase with our disability hate crimes, but not consistently over a 12-month period. We certainly see, we take 3-month snapshots throughout the year, and you will see one will increase more than the other over that period of time. So there has been an increase, yes, but in regards to a consistent increase over the year, it hasn't been the greatest increase. No.
You said they did a 20-day rehabilitation order, the incident you were talking about. What's that involved? What do they actually have to do for a 20-day rehabilitation?
It varies because that's dealt with by probation, and they will make a bespoke course for that person. So you have things like the Think First programme, which they have to go along, and there are talks, there's community interaction, there's teaching. Very often, we all know it stems from ignorance. So probation will design a course, having spoken to that person and decided what they need to support them be rehabilitated. But I don't think we have anyone from probation today to tell you about that, but certainly there are a number of different courses depending on the offence and depending on the person. But hopefully at the end of that they will have a better insight into how their offending affected other people.
Can I just add to what Jenny said, because I think historically most of the people sitting in this room who have supported individuals or communities will know that we've often asked the question, will perpetrators of these crimes, so the offenders, will they be dealt with, and who does work with them after the offence? I think Jenny would certainly agree from CPS. Historically we had anger management type courses, we had drugs and alcohol sort of courses for people to go on, but we didn't really have anything to do with the perpetrators of hate crime. It's a really pleasing thing to hear, not that we want to hear about hate crime, but that somebody is now, in the way of CPS or probation, are targeting these behaviours. And I think most people in the room, again, who work with individuals, groups or communities, would agree that that work has to be done. We talk about education at a younger age for people, but equally when you have perpetrators of hatred, prejudice, etc., you know, somebody needs to do some work with them. Verbal abuse tends to be the most regular hate crime, but of course it can escalate if nothing's done up to violence and even more serious crimes, as we've seen nationally and internationally. So I think it is a very positive thing, as Jenny's just described.
I've got one, and hopefully someone can explain it so everybody understands. Several of you mentioned that you were third-party reporting centres. What does that actually mean? To anybody that is a third-party reporting centre?
It means that anybody can come into our office, and then we can help them report. We can do it through. We have a pro forma that we can complete, which then goes to the police and to the victim care. But people can also do it anonymously. So for some people, they may not be comfortable going into a police station, speaking to a police officer for quite a variety of reasons. And then we can actually help people to report it. Either they want something done about the incident, and then they can come back through us and we can liaise with the police, or actually we can do it independently, which then builds up a picture of intelligence of a certain area for the police to deal with. I mean, Graham, would you like to add anything onto that?
No, I think you've covered it all there, Jules. Yeah, it allows us. It was put in place to overcome the barriers to reporting hate crime. Well, not all of the barriers, but as many as we could. So we created this new way of reporting where you could be anonymous. It didn't have to be investigated if you didn't want it. The victim's wishes were put at the heart of the hate crime report. The only thing that would trump their wishes would be safeguarding concerns, which fortunately is very rare. But what it allowed us to do was, if it wasn't investigated, it allowed us to identify where the problem areas were. So they could try and take a proactive approach to tackling hate crime in a certain area without actually having a victim going through the criminal justice process if they didn't want to. But we would have always been there from start to finish to try and encourage them if they did want to take it further. But if not, what they wanted to happen is what took place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I'd just like to mention a lot of the third-party reporting centres you can walk in to, but obviously if you're not open during the night time or evenings or weekends, we can provide a 24-hour service. Because it's like phone off, or you can text us, you can contact us online as well.
I've got a question. So this morning's reports have come in about last year's hate crime, and over the last 5 years, it's seen a 100% increase in terms of offences. So why does the panel and the professionals here, why do we think that over the last 5 years we have seen it?
Well, I think some of it is down to Brexit. Some of it's down to Brexit, unfortunately, whether you're a supporter or not. It is down to that. There are a lot of vulnerable communities out there feeling pressure at the moment, feeling like they're not allowed to be part of our communities. But we welcome everyone to be part of our communities. But nationalism is on the rise because of Brexit, thanks to what's happening in Europe and Trump. So there's a lot of that going on, and there's a lot of people that feel since Brexit they can say what they want to say, even though they're not really and shouldn't be allowed to say these offensive words and to sort of isolate our community. But as someone that works in the community quite a lot, I can honestly say that I've seen and I've heard a lot of people, yourself included, about sort of the hidden, if you want, not reporting it to the police, not thinking they've got anyone to talk to, feeling isolated, feeling vulnerable at this terrible time, to be honest, which I think is, I'm going to be honest, I think Brexit's awful. I think Europe being together was a really good thing, and I just hope somehow we can pull back those problems that are arising. But right now, the right are definitely on the rise, hate crime is definitely on the rise, and definitely a lot of people feel quite vulnerable. So I say a lot of that really, and that is also, so I work a lot within the community, and I've heard a lot of people tell me that. And also I sit a lot in community cafes, and I sit around a lot of people who are really quite unfairly racist at times, but I don't condemn them. What I do is I keep going to those cafes, meeting those people. Now, over the last few months, last year, I've seen changes because I talk to them and they've softened their approaches on things. So sometimes there's a way to deal with these things in a more subtle way, and I managed to do that quite a lot for the project that me and Donna are running, to engage people, to change their minds a bit. And I think it's really important to engage with people that feel they don't like other people and try to challenge their thoughts and their behaviours. But don't be scared not to talk to people just because they don't agree with you. Actually have a cup of tea with them, talk with them, because they start to think, well, this person's talking to me, they must be all right. So there's loads of ways to fight it, loads of ways. I'll pass you to Alan, actually.
Oh, no, I wasn't expecting that. Yeah. I'll take over to Basket. One thing I will say, Greg, is sometimes you say, an increase in hate crime reporting, sometimes that's a good thing, because all these crimes and all these things have been going on for a very long time. I'm what we call a queer historian, and I spend a lot of time talking to people about, different things, and people will say to me, I've got this abuse in the street, blah, 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 and like, oh, report it. Well, actually, it's okay, because, 5 years ago someone was throwing a brick at me, and now they're not throwing a brick, they're just calling me a name. I'm okay with that.
And that's a real thing to sort of change. So I think, you know, we're sort of moving through, and if people are becoming more willing to report, then that can be a good thing, because that challenge will make a difference, hopefully.
There's been a 40% increase in religious hate crime, which is, we think, unrelated to reporting increases. So that's a bit interesting in terms of, we know that reporting pathways are easier now. However, in terms of religious hate, that's gone up 40%, exclusive of reporting pathways improvements. So, Baz, why do you think, sorry, before you bring that, why do you think then, in terms of hate crime, in your experience, I know you've experienced a lot of hate as a Kurdish man in our own community, why do you think that there's been a massive increase, not just from reporting, but in general?
Thank you.
Come and stand up, Baz. Show us your nice red tie.
Yeah, okay, so there's no only one answer for that, because there are so many factors which cause to people to learn to hate, because no one born to hate other person. Look, if you look at the childhood life, you know, they could play with anything and anybody. So we have been taught and educated in a way, whether directly or indirectly, to learn to hate others. So because of denying of others and lack of tolerance and close-minded issues. But if you are open-minded, like how you want your education, your health, your anything you need for yourself, you have to understand that this is the same thing some other people want to do. And I would like to say empathy is the best antidote to hate. Put yourself to somebody's position. How would you feel if that happened to you? Just imagine that. Look, I shall say just to have A and B, in the group, in your own table. And can you please look at your neighbor, the person next to you, and look at the person next to you with a frown. Please, can you do it? But please do. But don't. Now, can you do it with a smile? How would you feel? You know, which one serves us more in the community? Is it smile or hate and anger? You know, because it's very hard to make somebody feel like, I don't know, build a trust. But it's so easy to spread the hate. So I think people, if you can learn to hate, there's a way to learn to love. Because like Nelson Mandela says, love is come more natural to human beings than hate. Because hate is like an energy. You know, and also it doesn't do any good to you. But the thing is, like yesterday I was listening to this man. It's a hate speech. The problem is a hate speech already. Using a hate speech as your own political game. That's the main real issue in this society. The hate speech, like this gentleman says, Nigel Farage, okay? 65% of the assessed child refugees came to the UK were actually adults. We are being taken for months. But that's not true. Because I deal with social services in Plymouth. I have been in Plymouth since 1999, or early 2000. And when an asylum seeker, or refugee, when an asylum seeker attends this country, they won't just believe when you say, oh, I am 15 or 12 or 16. you have to go through a test, an assessment, a real age assessment. So that's just basically spread hate, such a hate speech. So hate speech is a problem, to be honest with you. So also lack of empathy, close-minded, and sometimes media does manipulate the society.
Thank you, Baz.
Thank you.
Cheers.
So, our positive question to you guys, do we agree with that? I think we've got a couple of points here that actually the fact that hate crime reporting is up is actually in some cases a positive thing, like just an increase in the number of things being reported. But also what we've got is that there's some level of legitimisation of people's points of view based around what's happening politically across the world and across the UK specifically, and also the way that the media paints those facts in a certain way and uses them to tell a story. Is that something which people in this room can agree with? Is that something you would say is true? I see some nodding heads.
Yeah.
Yeah? But put your hands in the air if you do actually believe that there is an element of truth to that. Did you want to say something?
Can I just make a comment?
This might not work. You might need to
okay.
It might not work that far.
Hello, thanks for that. Yeah, thank you. I think it's quite positive that we see more people coming forward to report hate crime, etc., etc. But in my experience as a professional, I've been doing this work for the last 10 years and working with people from different nationalities. I think hate, my example is around race. I think it's been the same. The same people really, I would say people who are not aware, people who need awareness, ignorant, we had 10 years ago, it's the same numbers today. I think obviously we embrace the fact that we now have a lot of third-party reporting centres. People are coming, more services are actually embracing and being brave to actually speak up about it. So that's why we've seen an increase. But that doesn't mean that people were not really abusing people before incident happening. I will give you one example. I've been running sports sessions in the city, and I think the same level of incident we had 10 years ago are still the same. I think perhaps the difference is in terms of what has now become more obvious is that issues like the Brexit, using the wrong technologies by, I think I'll stand up just in case the microphone doesn't work, politicians using the wrong terminologies, etc., etc., has given people the mandate to actually come forward and do more abuse. But I think it's really important to know that the same level of abuse has been happening for years and years. I think that's really important to know. We're not saying it's not really good that people are not coming forward, but these issues have been here for years. I think what we need to be thinking about, and the debate is around prosecutions, is perhaps thinking about what are we doing and how are we shouting about people who are done with if they're found sort of guilty of hating somebody or committing a crime. I think we haven't been shouting enough. A lot of the people who are still staying behind, not coming even to third-party reporting centres, is simply because they don't have the confidence. They don't know whether enough has been done in terms of prosecution. And just one last example, I've seen a lot of cases where people have come forward, have been abused, verbally abused in the workplace, the police got involved, or actually the chap who did that has apologized, no, it's okay. Right? While perhaps the crime will not be prosecuted, nobody won't be taken forward, the victim will not report it again because that's just knocked down his confidence. I think these are some of the elements I think we need to be aware of and be conscious that we still have to keep doing it. But I think it's the question for me today and a lot of professionals or even people around the room, how much do you hear about people being done for hating others? So we need to be shouting a lot more.
I'd just like to add to that, just to send it to brilliant. I think things like today, just coming here today, and the fact that we're all kind of united and we're all linking up and doing stuff is the way forward to try and stop, and we're never going to stop it, I agree. And this country's always had a racist history, and it probably always will, but the point is we can do a lot together by being united,
linking up and combating these issues. So I think that's part of the way forward.
So following on from your point, I was going to come over to you actually. So Jackie that came along last night asked me to ask that question of the CPS and the police, which is how many crimes are being successfully prosecuted, and what can we do to make sure that people are aware that if they do report something, there is a high chance that it will be prosecuted. So I'm going to just hand this to you and you can field that one.
Thank you. I've got the hate crime prosecution rates hot off the press yesterday. So quarter 2 in Devon and Cornwall, the successful conviction rate for hate crime was 92.7%. So that means 9 out of 10 hate crimes that Devon and Cornwall police refer to Crown Prosecution Service, 9 out of 10 result in successful convictions. So that's a really, really positive message. Picking up on David's point about disseminating good news, that is something we need to do better. Conviction rate is good, the uplift rate, when we get successful uplift in the conviction to reflect the seriousness of hate crime is good in the southwest, it's around 80%. But what we need to do is we need to spread that message. So I'm fairly new in place still, and there hasn't been a inclusion community engagement manager in the southwest for a number of years. And one of the pieces of work that I'm hoping to do is to be able to, on a quarterly basis, to push out these good news stories where we do get good conviction rates, where we get successes, and we can highlight to the community that criminal justice system does take hate crime seriously, and that there are consequences for perpetrators.
Wait, can I just ask, in terms of my research, I have seen that hate crime is on the rise, as we've seen today in the new stats that have been brought out. So if we know that hate crime is on the rise, and we also know that prosecutions are on the decrease, could we talk about what's happening in terms of reporting and it getting to you guys at CPS?
I was at the National Police Chiefs conference on hate crime a couple of weeks ago, and nationally the stats are that in the last 3 years hate crime reports are on the rise, but referrals for hate crime from the police to CPS have been falling. On the positive side, Devon and Cornwall have bucked the trend slightly, and their referrals to CPS have stayed fairly level over the last 3 years. And last year it was actually up by almost 20%. So that's positive. However, in terms of the fact that hate crime reports are increased by over 100%, there is work that needs to be done both nationally and in the southwest for police and CPS to work together to process map all the various stages from incident and crime reporting in to outcome at the end, and to see what happens at each stage. Some of the crimes that are being reported aren't suitable for prosecution because in terms of what victims and witnesses and communities want, it's not always a criminal justice outcome that is the most appropriate. But until we do the work and do the research, we don't know what the trend is and what the figures are. And until we've got the solid data, that's how we can begin to address it. There is a regional hate crime forum that is in the process of being reinvigorated. This is where the hate crime police leads in Gloucester, Avon, Somerset and Devon, Cornwall come together with CPS. And we're hoping to get that forum started up again and really be able to work down, look at the data and see what we can do jointly through the southwest region to make sure that we've got really, really good systems in place to ensure that what's coming through has a good evidence base and the evidence is gathered in the way that is needed to be gathered so we can proceed to successful prosecution.
Thank you.
Any questions from the floor, guys?
I just wanted to touch on what the lady said. I think there's a big problem in Plymouth, particularly to people I speak to, and I've spoken to them about this, is not everybody knows what a level of evidence is needed to go to the CPS, and not everybody actually knows the role of the CPS. So whether there needs to be more promotion or awareness of the role of the CPS for our communities. So, but like you said, you're new in roles, so hopefully that will change.
Do you want me to add to that?
You're more than welcome to, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, that is something we have become aware of, certainly as an organisation. We've become aware that we were a bit hidden, we were a bit not seen by the public, and people didn't understand how we fit into the system, the fact that we're independent from the police, the fact that, you know, our remit really is to look at the evidence and take that forward to court. And I think, you know, as Clay said, she's new in post. It's a sign to me that we've realised that we're not engaging very well with our communities, and that we do need to address that, and we are addressing that. You know, and coming out to these kind of events, this isn't the first I've been involved in. I've been involved in a few different events now, and I have a real drive to come and meet people who are affected by the crimes. And my role, really, up until before this, was to meet people at court as witnesses. You know, and that's a scary environment to meet people in. And I realised that actually I can do a lot more than that. I can come and meet people before they even come into the system, and I can come and say, you know, this is me, this is my face, this is what we do, and I want to support you if you need to be a witness. And that's a horrible thing to have to do, to come to court because you've been a victim or a witness to one of these horrendous incidents. But I want to make that a process that isn't as scary as it needs to be, because it is scary, you know, coming to court. And if anyone's experienced it and had to go through that process, I hope, you know, as a CPS representative, we've made it a little bit easier for you. In relation to the outcome and the conviction rate for hate crime is clearly very good. We are working hard to secure those convictions for obvious reasons. But in relation to, you know, people coming forward and getting that conviction, yes, it is difficult, and obviously the police only refer to us the cases where there's strong evidence, because if there isn't, we can't put that to court. You know, and when you talk about you're unsure about the kind of evidence we need, well, the person on the bus. And I think the incident that Tway was talking about, we didn't have a victim who came forward, but what we did have were eyewitnesses, people who saw what was going on. What better evidence is there than somebody who sees what's going on? That they saw it, they saw how it affected that person that was on the bus, and they were prepared to come and stand in court and give that evidence. It's a marvellous thing to get a conviction on the back of that, because it just goes to show that, you know, we can all be the pioneer of creating conviction. So again, I go back to the bystander principle. If you see something that's going on, then come forward and support that person who's been affected, because that's the kind of evidence we need from the Crown Prosecution's perspective.
Can I just answer a bit to what you were saying about people don't know what constitutes evidence or whether something is true or not? I agree that we need to do a lot more education, a lot more dissemination about what hate crime is, what it looks like. But I think what I would say today is it's not up to the victim to decide. We need victims and witnesses to report. It's the role of the police to gather evidence, and the role of the police and CPS to decide whether that evidence will stand scrutiny and whether it is sufficient to proceed to prosecution. Victims and witnesses don't have to worry about, is this an incident, is it a crime? We're just asking people to report.
Thank you. Can we pass it over to some of the students, please? I get the sense that you're falling asleep there in the dark at that. So I'm wondering if we could speak to some of you about your understanding of hate crime, whether you've had any experiences of it, particularly those from ESOL. Helen, if you'd like to support your students. I'm really keen to get a real image of what it feels like to be affected by discrimination and bullying. Who wants to put the head of power? Who who's going to stand up and represent? Anybody? We'll wait here till someone does. So, which?
I've got a question.
Okay.
Kelly just asked about mental health, people suffering with mental health, they were included in the one. How about homeless people, drug sleepers?
Okay. I guess probably one for you, Graham, to sort of define whether or not that fits within. It certainly doesn't fit within the protected characteristics, but then.
No, you're absolutely right.
That on its own wouldn't be enough to constitute a hate crime that we have to record. The groups we have to record hate crimes against are under race, religion, transphobic crimes, disability hate crimes, and lesbian, gay, bisexual hate crimes. Now, if somebody from that community is one of those communities, absolutely would. But
they're not a minority enough on their own.
I'm afraid not for recording hate crimes against.
I guess what it's important to do here is realise that. But there is crime, and so if a specific crime has been undertaken, if that homeless person has been assaulted, or there has been, some form of even verbal abuse to a certain level, is that right?
What's public order?
Public order.
Yeah.
What if someone's being bullied because they are homeless? That'd be harassment.
Yeah, there would still be crimes there that we would investigate and deal with.
That is very often overlooked.
I'm talking about, the cases that reach the courts, and in relation to something like that, that's certainly an element that we would call an aggravating feature in a crime. So if someone's been specifically targeted because of their characteristics or their circumstances, then when the court comes to sentence somebody, in the sentencing guidelines that we have and what we say to the court about how we recognise this crime and how the punishment is given, then that would become an aggravating feature. So although we don't fit into a category of crime in relation to race or religion or disability, that's similar to age. Age at the moment doesn't fit into one of those categories.
So why does it have to be categorised and why can't it just be hateful stuff?
Well, and that's what I'm saying. It is recognised as an aggravating feature. I suppose the difference being is that with race and religion we have the legislation which gives the court the power to uplift, specifically apply an uplift for that feature in the crime. What I'm saying is we would, as the Crown Prosecution Secretary, saying this is an aggravating feature which should add to the sentence of the defendant.
But how many of those people will come forward?
Well,
because if you
but it's not unheard of. I've dealt with a lot of people who come to court who are homeless and have engaged in the process. In fact, and that is difficult for them alone because just communicating with them is difficult. Because obviously, telling them of a court date, a trial date is difficult because they don't have anywhere.
We just notice it's a bigger thing that's growing within Plymouth. The more homeless people that are on the streets. So we're sorry we're not coming away from that. We just want to make sure that everybody is included.
To give a perspective from Plymouth City Council, we have statutory duty to manage homelessness, and that's in our department as well, in community connections. We have trained and we are a third-party reporting centre, and a lot of our staff who are out there are third-party reporters. So in our team meetings we are speaking and making sure that we liaise with Graham's team. So I hear what you're saying, but we are trying to make sure if there is a crime or an incident that it's accessible to all so they can report. Sign is given time to speak with people that identified as victims for our service as well.
Just to add, the people who are homeless or seeking rough in Plymouth, there are a number of different organisations. I'm going to mention two in particular, so it's Crime Mission, but also CAB, and they provide drop-ins on a daily basis.
Half you can't go to unless you're nominated by the council.
You can't
if
go on to
you are a parent. You can't if you're a parent. You can if you're single, but you can't if you're a parent. So there is.
Okay, but they provide flights not only in person at their drop-in centres, but on half operate a RUS. CPCs sort of go out first thing in the morning to engage with people who are sleeping rough. They provide advice and information, they cycle some suspicious crime experts, and there they can get help benefits and all sorts of things. So there are established services within the city that help people that are homeless. But I recognise what you're saying about people with
I
families.
just find that homelessness is okay if you're on benefits. If you're not on benefits and you're a whack, then you don't get no help, basically. And that is the fallback of it. If you work and you don't claim benefits and you support your family, and that's the only way you support them, you do not get help. And I know that from being homeless with my children. I know that.
Okay, so not to sort of want to bring that discussion to an end, but I'd like to bring the focus back onto what we're here to talk about specifically.
Well,
about
I'd just like to say that I kind of agree with what you're saying down there. I mean, I do quite a lot of work with the 100 Homes Project through Oasis that do the food bank in Plymouth. I've done a series of documentary work recently where I've gone out and talked to the homeless. I've gone to spoke to them, they're on tape. And also, let's get the truth, and a lot of students are also going to food kitchens to eat because they can't afford to eat because the student fees have become too expensive. So I think it's 1 in 4 students now are eating.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I would really like to bring this back to issues of hate crime. So rather
yeah, I'm just going to say that, so it's not censor. Yeah, and the thing is, so out there right now, the figures for homeless is wrong because a lot of the homeless does, you know, a lot of those centres are also people that can't afford to eat. They're going to the food banks. That includes students. That includes people on benefits. And that again is a misconception of the whole problem that's going on out there. And I've got a lot of interviews historically now, which hopefully in years to come we'll talk. You know, people will examine that about this period of history. Yeah, and it's definitely a government issue. If we really want to change homeless, which is a hate issue, we need to change government policy. And I agree, a lot of the vulnerable people out there are getting abused a lot because you know, they're in a vulnerable state or on the streets. And I've talked to them a lot, and yeah, they do get a lot, you know, they get a lot of hate and a lot of things thrown at them.
Thanks, Pete.
I used to be homeless in Plymouth for almost 4 years. Not just homeless, I was also destitute, really crying for help, for support, for money, for food. I remember like yesterday, I went to Sainsbury and the world used to be like, a loaf of bread used to be 23p. And I grabbed a loaf of bread and I went to the cashier. And I had 22p, and I said, can I have this for 22p? And she said no. And I was like, come on, give it to me. I need it. I was like, not just homeless, destitute, really living in limbo. My life, my future, psychologically I was breaking down. Everything was in the hand of something called immigration. I never committed any crime. I was only homeless because the Home Office says, look, you can go back to your country. That was in 2003. Just in March 2003, where the USA and the coalition or the UK went to, whether you call it liberate or invade Iraq. That was just about a week before what happened. I became just, homeless. So it is homelessness. It is it could be anybody and you could be homeless. And hate happens to anyone, to be honest with you. It must not be defined. This is hate crime. Because you could be, hate crime could happen for anything. It's about the lack of respect for another person. You don't respect that person, that's why you act on your anger. And that's a problem.
I've got a few questions at the back there, so if we go to you first.
Yeah, have any of the panel experienced hate from themselves?
So, have any of the panel experienced hate crimes themselves? Probably just do this all by a show of hands, really. So, yes. Can I put that question back to the room? Has anybody in the room experienced what they would consider hate crime? Everybody, the back there. Okay, Maureen, you had a question.
Yeah, I do. It was something that was mentioned briefly around the role of the media and how they can sometimes manipulate our perspectives about different groups and organizations and types of elements of society. I guess it's a question for everyone. Is there something that we as individuals and also as particularly public service organizations, what responsibility or what can we do to challenge that bias within the media or perceived bias and actually do some corrective work to basically move toward changing people's perspectives and then impacting issues around hate so that we don't end up actually having hate crimes in the first place?
Okay, so I'll try and kind of summarise that as a question for the panel. What is there that we can do as individuals and as organisations to impact on media bias or perceived media bias in order that what the public see is factual? Okay. So we start with.
Hello, I'm Sister Iqbal. One of the things I would say is interaction. Now, I was looking for a car boot. I got lost in St. Austell. Lost with you. And I stopped for directions. Watching an elderly couple washing their windows outside, I parked my car and approached them. While I was having a conversation, somebody came up on a bike and shouted very loudly, "No mosques here," and then went away. Because he was so close and so loud, I shook. And the only reason he said that is because of my hijab. He knew I was Muslim. I mentioned it many years later to a police officer because I was on their team on hate crime. And they said, "Did you report it?" Well, I was too shaken. I didn't know you could report something like this. Then it came up with a diversity officer who said, in the area of Los Vidrio is a school who have stopped their children going on a visit to a mosque because it is seen as a terrorist religion. This is where interaction comes in. And I said to the officer, let's go and visit the school and speak to the parents first. Nothing's happened so far. I'm still waiting for an interaction. But what the head teacher said of the school was, don't mention it, they'll lynch me. Now this is coming from an education authority who's too afraid to bring up the topic of Islam with the parents of the children they're teaching. And I think that's terrible. The children need to be shown that the religion is not a terrorist religion. But the parents pick up everything from the media. So this is where interaction needs to come in. But so far, I'm still waiting to hear from them.
Does anyone else want to go to you?
Yeah, so I think you're right about the interaction with the media and actually standing up and speaking to them and getting involved, because in terms of the trans community, trans and non-binary community, we see articles coming up a lot recently in different newspapers, local ones, national ones, and sometimes the language they use is appalling, and sometimes the miscommunication of like facts and ideas is completely wrong. But myself and Erin, the other co-founder of Not Alone, we've done things like contacting the journalist at the Herald and saying, listen, what you've written is wrong, you need to correct it, and they have done. They've gone back into those articles and corrected things that they've written based on us actually contacting them and saying, listen, that's not right, that's, you know, maybe it's hate speech or maybe it's misinformation, and by just engaging with them, that then leads to better education for them and just a better knowledge of what's going on. And we engage with other organisations such as All About Trans, who are a national organisation who work with television shows and journalists and magazines and publications to get the right information out there. So it's on things like soap operas like Emmerdale and EastEnders where they have trans storylines. All About Trans will be helping the script writing and things like that. So we
and they have guidelines and things, as well as the EU, which is Transgender Europe. They have a journalist guideline, and we always forward local organisations or other people to those guidelines, so they know that if they're going to be writing anything journalistic or any kind of pieces about trans issues, that they've got a kind of a starting point to know the right language to use.
Thank you very much. Over to you.
I'd just like to say that one way to actually challenge the media, of course, is using social media and electronic formats and communication. So when those headlines are blatantly wrong, use the social media as a tool to actually challenge those sections and the way they're portraying perhaps a particular community. But then social media is also one of our enemies, because it's very, very easy for people to put up their own fake news, their own headlines. It's very easy just to click that like button. So somebody puts something racist on Facebook, the number of people that then support it and clicking that like button is shocking. But it's easy. It's much easier to do that than it is to actually be racist to somebody's face. But the damage is still being done, and it's then up to people like us to challenge those sort of things in social media. Thank you.
Okay. Would anyone like to add to that? Anyone from the audience like to add to that? I won't be able to give this to you, but if you can stand up and speak, that'd be great.
It's kind of confusing because bullying is seen as something less serious rather than until it turns into hate crime. It seems like when you're in school, it's just a way of life, but then as soon as you turn to an age where you can be prosecuted, it turns into a crime. When it's all about the same person, it doesn't seem possible.
Okay.
I just think bullying full stop should be taken seriously. I think the issue is that we need more education in schools, not just piecemeal education where organisations like ourselves, Red Cross, Hope, go into schools to deliver education around racist bullying. And with that, we're looking at respect, we're looking at bullying throughout, and we deliver any work in schools. I think the issue is that it's not enough on the curriculum. I think the curriculum has changed, and that the fact now is that everybody's looking at trying to get as much exams, trying to get all the best exams in the school, and actually not concentrating on what the real thing is. So you might have one module here, one module there, and actually it should be that it's throughout all modules and a constant thing at school. So actually, that respect is at the heart of it. So respecting everybody, not just looking at one incident at a time. That actually we look at bullying, racism, homophobia.
Just on the back of what Julie said, in schools you would have probably done citizenship or PSME or PSHE, and certainly police-wise, I covered 46 schools during a 6-year period, where you'd have talked about everything from primary up through secondary, about crime and the consequences. You'd have talked about, and these, there was other officers doing this at other schools, so we had a delivery within a PSME citizenship world. But sadly, as Julie's just said, that's become less and less of a thing the schools will give the time to deliver to young people. So therefore, even small pockets of work may go on where you bring in visiting speakers who come in and enlighten the children and raise their awareness, and there's a lot of question-answer session, and children will ask difficult questions. But sadly, it's being driven away, as Julie said, away from that, in the way they've got to deliver exam results. They're all in league tables and being monitored. And I think, I just want to make one more point. While statutory bodies, of which I'm part of, use statistics, that includes CPS, police, council, even probably the college, education, statistics, but what we're talking about today is victims. And those victims don't stop being victims because we've had a sort of a percentage of detections, or we've had a rise in reports, which could be seen as positive because people trust us more. Last year's percentages, where are those now? Where are those people? and those are still victims, and they could be repeat victims. So, you know, whilst we've even touched on mental health, you know, PTSD is going to affect so many more people than we even recognise at this moment. Is that a recognised disability? And if we have more homeless people tomorrow and next year, clearly not enough's being done, because we're still talking about victims in a variety of ways. So I think that's important.
Ask, if we're increasing, if what we're saying is right now we're not doing enough, right, and we know there's a 100% increase in offences, and we know we're going to add potentially misogyny and perhaps lifestyle choices. If we're not doing enough now, how on earth are we going to manage when we increase the characteristics for which hate crime falls under? What can we do to work together as a community with the police and the CPS to support that? Anybody? Graham, come on, tell us the answer.
Get it out there more.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Get it out there more.
I mean, in relation to not doing enough, I
take Graham's point. I think we're talking about lots of different organisations there in regards to the issues that were raised, not strictly crime and policing issues. I think with the increase, it's certainly about the awareness that the stuff that's ongoing at the moment needs to continue. Third-party reporting, when that was launched two years ago, we've seen in excess of 220 third-party reports in the last couple of years. That's 220 victims we never would have known about previously, that we've been able to work with and support. However, 70 to 80% of those reports, victims did not want any further action taken. So when we touched on the point earlier around the increase in hate crime reporting and the successful prosecution rate, we're seeing about 70 to 80% of victims not wanting to go through the process.
Why is that, do you think?
I think for a variety of reasons, and I won't take up all your time all day discussing it, but several different reasons, i.e. it could have been a historical incident a few weeks ago and the person doesn't want to give up the time to provide statements and all the rest of it, but they're happy to make police aware. We've seen situations like that. Situations where they're afraid of the process. And if you're talking an adult with learning disabilities and trying to convince them to go through the court process, you can sometimes do more damage than good, and you have to think about who's this for. Is it for the police and the CPS to get a successful prosecution at court and deal with an offender? Or is it about supporting that person in order to try and ensure that they report future hate crimes to us? So we need to put them at the heart of our decision making. So I think that's quite crucial as well. So everything we do, if the victim doesn't want a crime pursued or doesn't want to take into court, we have to justify that, because you've got to step outside of policy to support that decision. And my justification is about supporting that victim, take the steps they want us to take in order to try and secure future reporting, because if we get it wrong on this first occasion, we might as well kiss goodbye to that individual and potentially some of the community.
Yeah.
Did that answer the question? Or did I go on a tangent?
Do the audience agree with that in terms of the reasons why people don't report? Panelists. Amber, I know that you have some.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, there are many reasons why people don't want to head on to like prosecution or go anywhere near the courts, and they just want to report. I can say for myself, I had an example around last Christmas. It was actually at our work's Christmas party where I suffered a hate crime. There was one of our advisors who works elsewhere in the country. I only see them like at these kind of big work events. And they were very abusive to me, being trans, and saying that I wasn't a real woman and I never would be, and it was horrible. So I reported that, but I didn't want it to go any further because my work were really good about it. The managers were great. They, you know, probably like chastised him for it, and he's actually now left the company, which is nice. But I didn't want to push it any further, and I didn't want my work and kind of my place of work to be affected by a kind of any follow-up from the police or anything. I was happy with just reporting it, and my work handled it really well. So, you know, that for me was one reason why I didn't push it any further, and I just wanted to report it.
Thank you.
I've got a question at the back there.
So when someone reports it, does it have to necessarily be a criminal hate crime? Sometimes when you report it, you don't necessarily want it to result in a criminal prosecution, you just want
No, you're absolutely right. There's different methods on which we can deal with hate crime. I mean, the force policy, or the police policy, is that if we receive a report and there's enough there to justify a prosecution, that would then be sent on to CPS to make the final decision. However, we can step outside of policy if we deem that we can justify it. So something like the victim not wanting to pursue it, to me, is justification not to send it on to the CPS, because it's about supporting that victim. But touching on an example used earlier around a verbal apology or letter of apology, we've got other disposals available to us where we can look at things like community resolution, where sometimes a victim wants the offender to show remorse for what they've done, doesn't want to go through the process of the judicial system and attending court, but they deem it suitable that they would be pleased to receive a letter of apology showing that remorse. Now, our stance around hate crime is getting some sort of positive outcome for what has taken place. So if we don't send somebody to court, that's not the end of it. Is there an alternative that we can do that would keep the victim happy with a positive outcome, whether that is a letter of apology, or whether that is, if it's a child on child, we had one recently, 2 children at school, a racial assault, the victim and the family didn't want us taking further action. So we said, would you be happy with a letter of apology, showing the remorse from that other child, but also bring them into Charles Cross Police Station and we sit down and talk to them about the impacts of hate crime. It didn't involve the courts or the CPS, but it allowed us to try and get some sort of positive outcome. So when I see your question, it doesn't always have to go to court. There's normally something else that we can try and do to receive some sort of positive impact for the victim and for the offender or the suspect. Does that answer your question? Yes, so you're talking bullying as a result of, because of someone's race, really? Yes, it would be. Yeah. So, because it takes place in school, the school will have an obligation to record. That's can be a can of worms in itself, as I'm sure some of the professionals will agree, sat up here with me. If the school record it, deal with it, but the family aren't happy with how it's been dealt with, it can then come to the police and we will deal with it. But it will still be dealt with by way as a hate crime or hate incident, recorded by the school, and then we would get involved if the family weren't happy with that. We're also in the process of trying to sit in on the senior leadership team, which are all the deputy heads of schools in the city, to look at how we can work a bit closer with the schools to ensure that these are being captured a little bit more accurately, but also look at how we can support schools in dealing with hate crimes and hate incidents more effectively, but not just hate, touching on bullying, full stop, and any offences in school, and see if we can support them a little bit better.
Sorry, Graham, whilst you've still got the microphone, out of the incidents or crimes that are reported, how many, maybe a percentage, lead on to a conviction in, I don't know, if it's a
Oh, that's a really good question. I wouldn't like to say accurately, but I mean, from working on our department, we take hate crime on. We don't take all the hate crime in the city, so we see between 40 and 45 hate incidents a month in Plymouth. We've got 2 hate crime detectives who have a workload, who investigate between 10 and 15 at the moment. In regards to our ratio, I would say we probably work at 70%, maybe 80%, but we tend to take on the more difficult crimes and more complex ones. So we could take the easy ones and probably have a really good success rate, but the hate crime detectives aren't there just to have the easier crimes, but they're there because of their specialist knowledge and that experience they have. So we tend to pick the more difficult crimes. So it's a really difficult one to be asked, but certainly from my experience within the DCT, we probably put through about 7 out of 10 crimes to CPS.
Do you want to take it on that previous point?
Graham might be able to answer this question. In schools, are only racial and religious incidents recorded? And also, what's your question? Yeah. Just that one for the
No, it would be all five of the tech groups. But in regards to how accurate that is,
And what about independent schools?
I just wanted to go back to the previous question about having to report a crime, and just to say that at Stop Hate UK, if you call us, we recognise that you, as a victim of a hate crime or a witness, you've experienced something, you know, potentially very traumatic, which has been outside of your control. So we want to put you in control. So we really have a person-centred approach to how we take that report and how we deal with it. So we will take the information from you and only do with it what you want us to. We can suggest different referrals in terms of the police, different support groups, but we wouldn't do anything without your consent, and that's a really important part of it. And it might be that it's the second, third or fourth time you've contacted us that we would make that referral, because we do it at a pace that is suitable and appropriate for you, and it really is on a case-by-case basis.
Can I ask you, Albert, how much support you would give for people who don't have English as a first language? Because there are quite a few people in the room who are ESOL students. A lot of them are refugee and asylum seekers, so they've come here because of that anyway. So there's a fear, there's an apprehension of going into any institution to report anything. And there's also a huge language barrier. So what kind of support can they expect when they come to you guys having experienced some sort of incident, which they do regularly?
Okay, so if anybody contacts our helpline on the free phone number, all we would need somebody to tell us is their name and their language, their first language. We would then commit to getting back to that person in one of, we're growing all of the time, but we have at least 45 languages. And if you look on our website, you can see all of the languages that we have support in. And we use the big word translation service. And from that initial call, we would work with an interpreter to gather that information from those individuals, again, as long as it would take to get that information. So that's how we work it currently. So if you were to look on our website, you would see the languages that we currently have. If you notice there's a language that you need that we don't have, please contact us because we're growing that all of the time.
There's another question at the back.
In relation to reporting, does it have to be, like, do you have to give your identity? Some don't want to know, say, you know who they are. Especially if you're as a witness it and you're reporting it from what you see, you don't necessarily want to then have your identity shared because you might fear then becoming a victim of.
That is covered in the film, but I think it's third-party reporting, bystander reporting allows you to do that anonymously. It's more about gathering the information, having the information recorded. So no, but that's.
Please don't forget Crime Stoppers as well, where you can remain totally anonymous if you want to pass information in. So they're separate to the police, but they will inform the police of the information only, not the details of the person. I hope I didn't answer. I hope I didn't say what you were going to say there.
You stole his thunder.
I think it is very, well, it's just reporting for the sake of reporting, for the statistic, is one thing. And reporting the real and actual incident, the offender will be, you know, at least, even if it has not been persecuted, it will put him off in the future, not doing it again and again. So it's best to report it to the police, I would suggest. Because that's what we need to do, not just reporting for the sake of the reporting.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Yeah. Hi, Mike. Can I just add, you mentioned something about independent schools? Yeah. Is zero tolerance. I know it from experience because my son is brown. He was called a Maharaja. And straight away they jumped on the person like a ton of bricks, and it was never repeated. I think that's because the parents are contributing towards the school with their fees, and they do not want any kind of discrimination, so money talks. Okay? In state schools where I grew up, and in comprehensive, it happened all around me, and it was ignored. Like, it's just another thing that you do, and you grow out of it.
but I think it should be tackled.
So Sarah's got a question here for some time.
Going back a little bit, you talked about how some of our politicians, for a loose word, and some of our newspapers intentionally misreport to incite racial hatred. Why are they not prosecuted? Why do we not bring people like Nigel Farage, who intentionally lie about the immigration status, about race in this country? Why do we not bring them to prosecution? We want people on the streets to report hate crime, and yet these powerful people, white, straight men, I hate to say it, get away with it every day. So why am I going to go, I'm going to report this because something might be done?
I think they should all be arrested personally in Parliament. I mean, they're all bigoted and racist in my opinion, and they use it to further their careers and to get votes. That's what politicians do. And if you look at the Brexit thing, it was never about the interest of what the people really need in this country. It was about fueling what they really need to stay in power. So if you want a real change, change the politicians.
Well said, Matt. I think high speed is something, to be honest with you, it must become a law through the Parliament. Not just using the high speech for the political goal and fear-mongering the society for your own filthy, greedy purposes. That's something really, because if you imagine, look at or consider the amount of the hate, how it increased and increasing massively after the Brexit campaign. It's just unbelievable. So what's the reason? It's very obvious. You don't have to look for the why is that. It's obvious. Like somebody, I don't need to say the names, those people who's on the media, on the radio all the time, can they find a job? Do something beneficial for the community, not just spreading poison. That's what they do.
We'll come over to you. One of my specialities is media. I'm a media lecturer. That is my actual job. So my position on this is that actually the media is not inherently biased. The media is fairly centrist in its positioning. However, there are obvious examples where that is not the case, and there is certainly in print media a lean to the right in terms of ownership, in terms of the structure of the industry. And that, I guess, is where those problematic statements come from, the likes of the Daily Mail. In terms of why those people, those individuals are prosecuted, these are masters of spin. These aren't people that you can easily go at and arrest. They never use facts in a way which is inherently racist. It's an implied racism. It's kind of, will drift around the side and will say just enough to inflame those kind of fears and that kind of bigotry, but only just enough, never enough to overstep the boundary into illegality. And that, I think, is the real genius of their Machiavellian plans, I suppose. I don't want to turn this into a political debate, because it isn't that. It's about the specific instances of hate crime. But we can challenge that. Fundamentally, as individuals, we can challenge that by taking a more humanistic approach in our day-to-day lives, but also by becoming humanist activists, by standing up for people, by reporting those crimes when you see it, by challenging those headlines that you fundamentally disagree with, especially where, you're quite right, they've used facts to back up an argument which doesn't, upon any real investigation, stack up. But that can only come from us. Culturally, societally, that's what we need to be doing, and that's what this is a kind of a starting point for. But anyway, that's my 2 pence worth on that as a media professional.
I think as well, normally when there's stuff in the media or on Twitter or Facebook, a lot of the arguments back is, well, it's freedom of speech, but freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences. So, yeah, there might be freedom of speech, you might be able to say things, but if those things are offensive, if they hurt other people, if they're illegal, then you will face consequences for it. And it's not as straightforward as it should be. It's not as easy as it should be, and I think that's definitely something we can probably all agree on. But for example, Katie Hopkins has said some horrible, awful things, but eventually, because people kept reporting it, and then Jack Monroe, a blogger, took her to court for some lies that she had spread, and now she's filed for bankruptcy, which is great. So eventually we will get there. And I think it's also about microaggressions as well. So we talked about education in schools earlier. How often do teachers intervene if they hear a student say, "Oh, that's so gay"? Actually, that is offensive, but how often do teachers intervene? I know they certainly did when I was in school. And there's constant microaggressions. My partner works in healthcare. He was told not to go to certain patients. My partner's a Bulgarian national, because they didn't like speaking to foreign people. So his boss told him that, and that isn't right. But he didn't want to report it because he didn't think it was too important to be seen as discrimination. It wasn't important enough to be seen as discrimination. And it's those constant microaggressions that we all need to constantly challenge as well.
I'm coming over to you now. And I would echo that, and that comes back to what I was just saying, that those microaggressions, those things that we let slide in day-to-day life, that's really up to us to challenge those wherever we can and report them wherever we can.
I just want to make a point around the impact of what we're talking about today, hate crime. I think one of the things we've noticed over the years is people feeling like they're not welcome. And I'm talking about all different strands of diversity, really. And the point I want to make is, again, the lack of confidence for people to come forward, which is as a result of the impact. And I'm talking about unspoken and unseen, perhaps evidences, that people may say, or unseen things that may happen. And I think as an example, we do have a lot of families who've settled in the city who will not go shopping between the hours of 7 and 8 p.m. They have to do it after 8 p.m. for various reasons, because they don't like the way people are looking at them. We have a lot of people who don't have the confidence to attend normal surgeries, GPs, because they don't like the way they've been spoken to. Part of the work that we do as well, even within, let's say, for example, within refugees communities, we also have what we call LGBT communities. Some people in the room are doing some work with them. So we're also doing awareness raising within those communities that we call minorities, just to respect other people who are different. And I think one of the challenges really, people not having the confidence, because they are not welcome, simply because of the way they've been looked at, the way they've been spoken to. And I think I just want to make a point around that really. The video is great, but I think there's need to be something that's similar. I'm not sure who gave you the funding, but certainly you need more to really highlight that. Speak to people who want to say something about why they're not even coming forward. Speak to people who are moving cities altogether. Speak to people who are leaving the country altogether because of that. I think that is a massive issue. And I think even sitting in the room today, I wish and I hope we can have more questions from the floor to challenge positively some of the professionals. Because I know people sat here have got a lot of issues. But yet again, that confidence is not there to speak, because I think people rather stay isolated. And I think in the city, you now have a growing number of grassroots communities who just choose to be isolated, simply because they find comfort and confidence in staying with their own communities. There's no point integrating because people don't feel welcome. You know, they can't talk about it. They don't have the confidence. I think there's a lot of work to be done around that. And just to make a point that for people on the floor, please ask questions, because I think some of us are aware that you are seeing things that you don't want to talk about. You rather keep quiet, but it's not by doing so. You need to speak up so that we can help give you some of the answers.
We've got two hands that just gone up. And I'd just like to follow on from that. So you're right, that this project was funded. It was funded by Workers for Students. That's why we're all here. That's a part of it. But this isn't a project which ends today. This is a project which does have a legacy. So the film's going to be available on a website, along with a whole load of additional downloadable resources. I've got a crew of student filmmakers here with us today. What we'd like to do is offer the opportunity to the panel members, but also to the audience, to come forward and share your experiences, be they good experiences or bad experience, or just a kind of a general comment that you want to make. We'll capture those as kind of living histories, and we'll put them on our website to support this resource. And we want to meet with those groups and develop this story further and this investigation further. So we are open to that. So thank you for bringing that up. It's really helpful. And we have two questions over here off the back of your teeing them up.
It wasn't a question as such. It was just a kind of what would you do situation. So we are health and social care students, and last year we did a module on equality and diversity. And during that module, we spoke about elderly patients or patients with dementia or things like that. And it came up that these patients can sometimes be, without actively meaning to, quite hateful to certain people because of their ingrained beliefs that about certain communities from their past, and without kind of meaning to, well, I don't know if they mean to or not, but it can be quite offensive to people in service. What would you do regarding that if you are somebody that feels that you're being bullied or like that you're having hate put towards you, but it's your job and you feel like you have to be there to help people? Interesting.
It's a hypothetical, but it's not. It's a real world thing that people actually live with.
Derriford, it's incredibly affected. Nurses at Derriford. Nurses in Derriford, if they're not in the UK, receive an extremely high amount of racism and hate crime. And it's their job. And if they don't go and do it, they don't eat, they don't get rent. So in terms of what happens, who is responsible for supporting care workers and nurses when they go and do their job, police officers, etc., ambulance guys, I know ambulance services get a load of abuse. How do we manage that? How do we deal with that on a personal, human level when we get it all the time, every day?
I just want to share one. I work for one of the largest humanitarian organizations, the Red Cross. I'm not sure how other organizations will deal with it, but I think it is okay for organizations to take the steps and tell people they're supporting that you cannot abuse others. Yeah. And one of the examples is I've had incidents where people come forward and say, I want to speak to the manager. All right, the manager is right there. Oh no, I don't want to speak to that black person. We as an organization have the right to tell someone, we're here to support you. We will also have the right not to support you if you are abusive. Yeah. So I think it's about not really being a bystander and speaking up on behalf of those people, really both sides really of the argument really. And I think the main thing is about people knowing it's not okay, whoever you are, whether you've been supported, it's not okay. And if you do it, you will be prosecuted, and there are consequences. I think the main challenge is about people knowing that it's not okay to abuse others. It's not okay, whoever you are.
I work in health and human sciences at the university, so we have a lot of nursing students and health professionals. And I don't really have an answer, by the way, just to put that out right now. I know that there's experience within the NHS or within most healthcare of just put up and shut up. So people don't say anything, they are too scared to say anything because of the structures that are in place in not just the NHS, but in any big organisation. If you make a complaint, if you report something, very often you can kind of be marked, and that can affect your career. Yeah. So I agree with what you were saying. I don't really have an answer, but it's so ingrained in so many big institutions, and even looking at I don't like to bring up Trump very often, but looking at a woman reported sexual harassment, finally came out, spoke about those issues, and yet he still got his Supreme Court nomination, and went on to be a judge. So yeah, it's so ingrained. So we need to keep speaking up and keep sharing those experiences, and then eventually I think people will actually start listening. but it is just such a slow process, and it is so frustrating. But yeah, so it's not really an answer, but just that I agree.
Okay, we've got time for one more question. So you with your hand up there. Okay.
How do we expect to fight hate crime if then those people that we are able to prosecute against are being put into boxes? So we've kind of just been told that, oh, we can prosecute against this, but we can't prosecute against ageism or anything else. So it's kind of just hypocritical.
Okay, so again, this comes back to the broad definition of what is a hate crime and what is a crime. I feel like Graham and Mike are going to be the two best people to answer this question.
In relation to your question, we still have criminal offences. Now, the fact that we're talking hate crime today, if you've got somebody who commits a criminal offence, they will still be looking at being prosecuted if we have the requirement of evidence. So it's not a case of, because they don't fit into a community that's affected by hate crime, it's not taken seriously. Because that by no means is the case. If somebody commits an offence and we have full support of the victim and we've got the evidence there, positive action will be taken, as with any crime. The difference with a hate crime is that there's some slight differences in regards to how we progress with that, i.e. it's an enhanced service around the support for victim, because we know victims of hate crime are, the psychological impact towards victims of hate crime is huge. So we need to make sure we've got the measures there in place, but at the same time, if you're talking about somebody who's a victim of a crime, and it's not a hate crime, but they've still had that same sort of impact, we still make sure the same support agencies are put in place to give them that support. So we have something in policy around hate crimes and what you do from that, unless it's justified, but the same resources and support that's there for hate crimes is there for standalone crimes as well. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Lovely.
Mike, do you want to add a final comment to it?
Yeah, on the news this morning, there were several reports. The government were actually questioning this themselves about ageism and people's gender. Look, they were also questioning the fact that at the moment, a racist and religious hate crime carries a heavier sentence or punishment, and they were questioning that because the LGBT community and the disability community don't get that heavier weighted sentence. So the government were supposedly looking into all this, whether they get around to doing anything. I expect our colleagues from CPS might be able to update us.
And that goes again to what I was talking about earlier, about there being aggravating features to crimes. So the evidential test that we apply to a hate crime is the same that we would apply to a non-hate crime. There's no difference in the way we deal with the evidence and the way that we categorise that and the way we put it to the court. The difference with the racial and religiously aggravated crimes is that uplift. We can ask the court to apply an uplift to the sentence and tell us what that uplift is, so that we know the difference between what a Section 5 Public Order Act offence, for example, somebody swearing in the street and generally being unpleasant, as opposed to somebody using racist terms in the street and generally being unpleasant, as well as using those racist terms. We know what the difference in the sentence is. But the age issue certainly is an element that we ask the court to treat as an aggravating feature, so that they do uplift that sentence. They just don't have to say what the uplift is. So we still apply the code in relation to evidence. We still look at the public interest in the same way. We don't change the way we address that part of the case. It's the same.
I think.
Can I just add one little bit on?
Little.
Very, very short. In terms of what the government is looking at, just to be clear about different roles in the criminal justice system, CPS do not get to decide what sentencing is. That is the job of the court. So the magistrates and the judge will get to decide what the sentence is on the basis of the evidence that's presented to them. So that's about legislation and sentencing guidelines. The Law Commission is
around 2 years, but we're hopeful that the recommendations from that will be instrumental in influencing change in terms of sentencing and definitions of what is and what isn't hate crime.
Can I just go on from that very quickly and just say that when the court is sentencing, one of the biggest impacts I can say from our perspective is when a complainant or a victim provides what we call a victim personal statement. And if that statement is given to us and that person says how the crime has affected them, whether that be, you know, because of their gender, their sexuality, their race, religion, whatever it is, we can read that to the court. You know, in the magistrates' court, certainly, they're normally 3 magistrates from society, and I can tell you from experience that can have a massive impact on the way that they view the crime. So that's another element that we can bring in and help, and people, victims of crime, can come to court and read that statement out to the court if they are so compelled. So again, you know, there's an ability there, and that's not just in relation to hate crime, that's in relation to the impact on all crime. But
thank you, Jen. So we have run out of time. Thank you all very much, audience, for getting involved and for asking the questions. I'd just like to finish by saying thank you to everybody that's attended. So a round of applause for those guys. And a big thank you to Victoria for organising tonight. And then a final thank you to you guys in the audience for taking part. Thank you. Let's go, Julie. Let's go.